Wildlife rehabilitation is important for many reasons, and especially because these animals are part of the ecosystem, which is all interconnected. So giving these animals a second chance is very important to Woodlands, but also important to all of us, humans, the environment, nature, the entire ecosystem.
We rehabilitate at Woodlands. We specialize in mammals and reptiles. We do all New Jersey mammals with the minor exception of deer, and that's only because our facility is surrounded by a plant nursery. So out of respect and a mutual agreement, we have let other rehabilitators in the state, take care of the deer. But we work with all of the mammals from the smallest, mice, to the largest that we have in New Jersey, and that's the black bear. Everything you can think of in between. I mentioned a few: possums, raccoons, squirrels, chipmunks, black bears, foxes, coyotes, bobcats, all of the furry ones you can think of. And then we're lucky enough to have been given the respect and the understanding to be able to work with endangered species, like the bobcat in New Jersey, and some reptile species, and also the venomous snakes, and all of the turtles that are here.
So a day at Woodlands would probably be coming in, checking if there's any messages or calls about animals, taking care of the animals that are currently with us in rehabilitation, potentially getting in new animals, going through and checking on everything, probably doing some behind the scenes work because we have to do the fundraising and everything that isn't upfront and obvious. And then we come back and do it all again the next day. The first thing we have to do when an animal comes in is get information from the person bringing it. So we need to know where that animal came from and if that's different from where the person is coming from. And then we let that animal settle before we do a full physical exam to determine what the animal needs as far as nutrition, housing, and if any veterinary care is needed. Maybe they're injured, maybe they've just been exposed to the elements, and it's very challenging sometimes to bring them back from that and hopefully get them released again. But then the other challenging thing I would say would be the opposite, where we have these animals that are ready to go and we've worked so hard to help them be released, and now it's time, and we want to make sure that goes well, and we give them their absolute best second chance, and that can be pretty bittersweet. So habituation is a concern with working with wildlife, but we're very hands-off here at Woodlands Wildlife Refuge. So if an animal needs to be hand-fed because they're too young to eat on their own, or if they need critical care, we have to be hands-on. But other than that, we're very hands-off, and then we keep the young animals with their same species so that they're growing up together and learning from each other, and we've had great success with preventing habituation.
Well, we have endangered species in New Jersey. So the bobcat and the timber rattlesnake are endangered species, and there's plenty of species of concern, several of the reptiles, and threatened species. Again, several of the reptiles, certainly probably fair amount in the avian aspect as well, but we're not working with those. But it's changing so much. The bobcat population has been in trouble for many, many, many years, and that's because of construction, because of the highways that have been cut across the state. So their populations used to run through the state, and now it's population north and population south, with those major highways, which we travel on all the time, that have just cut the habitat.
I'll say that all of the animals are very wild, and they will defend themselves if they feel cornered and they don't understand that we're trying to help them. Some of the most challenging animals might be adult raccoons or bobcats or foxes that are large and they want you to back off. They're telling us, no, this is not okay, and that's all normal behavior, which we want to see. So we have to be in control of the situation and keep ourselves calm so that we can reduce the stress of those animals and help see them through to their release. Why do I do this? I am here at Woodlands because I've always wanted to help animals, and when I started volunteering here, I didn't know what wildlife rehabilitation was. So it really opened my eyes to a whole new world, a whole new field of work, and I was hooked ever since, wanted to work here and help the animals.
Why do I do wildlife rehabilitation? This is a question that's often asked, and the answer is because it's the right thing to do. The wildlife is out there. We encounter wildlife every day in our everyday activities. Human-wildlife encounters are happening all of the time, and I have a great respect for those wild neighbors that we have all over the place. And finding out over the years early on that there were people that were helping these wild animals was my inspiration to get more involved and dive a little deep into wildlife rehabilitation. We're so incredibly busy. We're handling close to 2,000 animals a year now, with a small but mighty staff and a wonderful army of volunteers. So I would say that the overall scope of it. We also are a nonprofit, so we're a charity that has to raise funds. I would say that's equally challenging part of the entire process as well. So the numbers of animals that we work with is a huge challenge on human resources, on staff and volunteers, and also financially and space. We're always recreating and making room and expanding and making changes to be able to, not have to turn anything away because we don't have the money or we don't have the staff or we don't have the room. Oh, so Woodlands Wildlife Refuge really needs plenty of volunteers. So we are small staffed, large workload. Volunteers are the driving force behind the amount of work and the amount of animals that we care for and release, and also helping to educate the public. So we have a very strong volunteer program and a very strong internship program. So we try to inspire as best we can to keep that interest flowing in, all of the time. I would say the other challenging part would be getting the public to tolerate, to learn about, their wild neighbors, to participate in the excitement, of having those animals, close by, and what their role is, the animal's role is in the overall community. Our wildlife is impacted by people in so many ways, and it's really as human beings, and we have our homes, and we have our yards, and we have our kids, and we have our schools, and we have our cars, and we have just everything that we do as people on our day-to-day activities impacts our wildlife greatly in some way. Driving down the road on the way to work or on the way to drop your kids off to school or whatever, and something runs out in front of you, or you see something that's hit on the side of the road. That's one very common way that our wildlife is impacted. Construction, highways, all of those things are disturbing habitat, sometimes greatly fragmenting habitat for populations. It's like everything that we do as humans probably has an impact on our wildlife in some way, whether it's really minor or really major, as in major construction activities. So from the smallest thing, digging up your garden in the spring and uncovering turtle eggs, to taking trees down and putting a house in its place. Something has to shift there, good or bad or in between, something shifting and impacting our wildlife. Preserving habitats is a very important aspect of what every human being can do to limit the negative effect that we have on our wildlife. And again, if you're thinking about growing a vegetable garden, think about growing a pollinator garden. If you're thinking about mowing your lawn, don't mow all of your lawn. Leave a wild space. If you're thinking about cutting down a tree, maybe for safety's sake on your house, think about planting another tree somewhere else, that won't impact the safety of your house. There's so many little things that we can do. If we're taking away something from our personal environment, our yards, then think about replacing it nearby with something else that will just negate that negative effect on the natural habitat, in that area. let's get the next generation to get excited about the wildlife. Even if, that's the younger kids are so tech oriented, there's wonderful things that they can find out on their phones or their pads about wild animals. I would love to have just as much engagement as possible in what's happening around you nature-wise. And thankfully we do have education programs that we try to help with that. Yeah, so I think just moving away from concern and fear about our wildlife to amazement and awe and understanding tolerance.